titled Listen to the Animals, because we actually have two types of animals that come into our lives. The first is our pet, which has made a choice to be with us. They usually come in to serve us in some sort of way. And the second may be a group that is less frequent, and it often involves the wild animal kingdom. And they are the messengers. They bring information for us that is pertinent to us at that time in our lives. Now, how many of you do have pets? Good, good. Now, how many of you already talk to your pet? Very good, because that's one of the things I want to stress in today's talk. One of the things I'm focusing on today is how to improve the relationship with your pet in terms of better communications. So ways that you can communicate to your pet, and also ways to be receptive to your animal's communications back to you. And then secondly, I wanted to talk a little bit about the wild animal and the fact that it does come and bring messages, and perhaps ways that you could get that information. And then we're going to have a live demo of me doing a conversation with a hopefully very friendly poodle. Okay, as I said, I've been doing this for about 12 years now, and the way that I experience animals communicating is a telepathic way. I am a pet psychic. I can hear their words, feel their emotions, and also I can feel their body sensations. So for example, if an animal is feeling pain, I can feel where that pain is in my own body. And that can be very helpful in many situations, because lots of times what we consider inappropriate behavior in an animal is an effort to avoid pain. For example, I just worked with some really neat miniature horses, and the little stud wasn't able to do his job anymore because he wasn't able to stand up on his little hind legs anymore. So I was able to feel where his pain was, and his human was able to take him to an animal chiropractor in the Houston area, and she wrote me an email back saying, "You just saved my breeding program." So it can come in very handy to know things like where they hurt. A lot of you talk to your animals. A lot of you probably already know when your animal is happy, when they're sad, when they don't feel good, that sort of thing. So you are already communicating and receiving information. What I have done is been able to move that into the more conscious level so that I actually hear words. Now, each animal is going to communicate in its own unique way. As humans, you probably are aware that some of us are auditory. We prefer our information to come in through our ears. Some are visual, and we prefer to look at or read or see what we want to take in. And then there's others that we call tactile kinesthetic that have to touch or manipulate to learn. Well, animals have their own varieties too of how information is going to come from them. Some of them are very verbose. Some of them will just, you ask an open-ended question and they'll speak 5 pages worth of information. Others, yes, no answers. Others will give a lot of pictures, and others will give you kind of emotional impressions, which you kind of have to interpret to get the message that the animal is sending. And other animals use all of those above. So I hear, when I talk to an animal, the animal's voice and the voice that I use to talk to myself with. You know, the one that goes, yana, 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 all the time. But each animal has a slightly different energy vibration, so that I can talk to several animals at the same time and know which one is speaking to me, just as you would in a conversation with different humans. Other animal communicators do it a little differently. They actually hear a different voice. I don't know why. I just do it the way I do it. And so one of the things I want to stress for you is that when you are attempting to hear your animal, to be receptive to whatever comes. Okay, talking to an animal is very important because it stimulates their mental and verbal abilities just as it does with young children. You've probably heard about research with children that were in like foster homes or orphanages and didn't get that early childhood stimulation, and as a result they had delayed language skills and delayed mental development. Well, the animals are the same way, that if you talk to them, they are more stimulated and more interactive with you. I had a situation where I was working with a cattery owner, and I was there to talk with several of the queens, and she had a new queen that had come in from another cattery that had never been considered sort of a being, a spiritual being, but rather just sort of livestock. And so when I started to talk with that animal, it was like, somebody can actually hear me? It was very surprised. It had not gotten that experience before. So speaking to them is very important. I believe they understand human speech. And some animals are going to vary in intelligence. I work primarily with dogs and cats and then horses. And I have not noticed that one species in general is smarter than the other, but I have met individual members of each species that are smarter. And then I have met animals that are smarter than me, which is quite humbling at times. So the stimulation of your conversation is important. Not to negate the animal's intelligence, but I would recommend speaking to them as if they were children of the age about 5 or 6. Not because they're less intelligent, but when we talk to a child of 5 or 6, we tend to use less idioms. We tend to be more clear and direct and precise in what we're communicating. So for example, if you had an animal that you were trying to prepare for spaying or neutering, you might start talking to them a few days in advance and explain why we humans do this to animals. And I have always found that it's been helpful to say we do it to ourselves as well, that we don't just do it to the animal kingdom. But for example, that you would say, I'm going to have to be taking your food away. I'm going to be taking it away about 10 o'clock tonight. The reason I have to take the food away is that if you have food or water after a certain amount of time, it can have a negative effect with the anesthesia that will make you sleepy. You might vomit. You might have a complication during surgery. Then I would explain where the incision was. I would explain what type of stitching they might be having. I would also explain if they were going to stay overnight or if they would be coming home. All of those things can help reduce the stress level of the animal. Can you imagine what it would be like for you to go into a hospital and have no one telling you what was going to happen? Or go to the dentist office and have him just start poking things in your mouth and not know what his intent is? So the more you can communicate to your animal about events in your life, the more even the animal's life is, more pleasurable, less stressful, etc. Now, I think using mental pictures is a wonderful way to communicate to animals as well. Pictures, as that trite saying, really do communicate in 1,000 words, one picture. It can be very good in training situations. How many of you are horse people? Okay, a few of you, okay. What has been beneficial in situations such as barrel racing or dressage or whatever is that you run a movie in your head of what you want that animal to do perfectly. Because as we all know, learning something new requires many sequential steps, and then getting the gestalt of the whole thing is kind of hard to do. But a picture shows you that in a wonderfully clear and precise way. There are many animal communicators that have been out there for many years. One is Beatrice Leidecker, who wrote a book many years ago, What the Animals Tell Us, and she really stressed using mental pictures. One of the stories in her book, for example, was a horse that had some back problems. The chiropractor came out and made an adjustment, but the adjustment would not stay unless the horse rolled over. This was a particular breed of horse that had been trained never to roll over. So she had the horse in the stall, and she kept giving it a picture of going out into the pasture and rolling over, explaining why it was important, showing the picture, explaining, showing the picture, explaining. Let the horse out of the stall and went out into the pasture and rolled over and set the adjustment. So pictures can be very beneficial when you're wanting to communicate something to your animal. Now, a lot of you may have left your animals at home for an extended period of time to attend this conference. Did anybody talk to their animal about how long they were going to be gone and that sort of thing? It's really nice to do that. So, for example, with my gang, I said, okay, I'm leaving, and I'll be gone 5 days. And we have a pet sitter. They already knew the pet sitter, so that wasn't a big deal. And I check in every day. I check in the morning to see how they're doing, and I try to check in at night before I go to bed. Now, mine seem to understand days, and so they are comfortable with the fact that 5 days I'll be back. They have a history of me traveling and returning, so they are comfortable with me being gone. Now, some animals may not understand day, but you could say 5 dark times. Mine don't seem to have that problem, but others, they need that expression dark because they know the cycle of light and dark. Okay. So talking to your animals and using mental pictures. Now, I'm sure the big question is, okay, how can I hear what the animals in my life have to tell me? Now, as I said, a lot of you are already communicating. You know when they're happy. You know when they're sad. You know when they're hungry. You know when they want to go outside, or you know when they want to be petted, or you know when they want to be left alone. So you're already doing a lot of communication. And I bet you're doing a lot more than you think you already are. One of the things I found out recently is I have an experience with a foster dog. I haven't had this before. She's an Australian Shepherd, about 4 years old, who's temporarily at my house. And she doesn't like the crate. But yet I was trying to give my cats a break because she may be blind in one eye, but she can see my cats real good to chase them. So I was trying to figure out how to separate her without using the crate. And so I woke up one morning, I heard this phrase, why don't you try putting her into the bedroom? And normally I would have, thought that that was my own idea. But actually the voice that I was hearing was a different vibration than my own. And I realized this was Evie telling me in the third person a suggestion that she had. So some of the communications they may be sending may be kind of hidden communications so that you think this is your own idea. Isn't that sneaky? But very clever. The others ways that they do communicate, of course, are directly through their eyes, through their body language, which we are doing a pretty good job at picking up. Now, I started out by writing with the non-dominant hand. How many of you have ever heard about that technique? Just a few of you, okay. The idea is based on that writing with the non-dominant hand accesses the intuitive or right brain side. The technique is basically that you write your questions with your right hand, or the dominant hand, which in my case is the right hand, and then you put your pencil in your other hand and you listen for whatever the animal has to say. And that's how I got started. And I had to write at first everything the animal said or the voice would stop. Then after a period of time, I just had to write the first paragraph, the first sentence, the first word, and then I just had to hold the pencil. Now I just engage in a conversation with an animal just like I would with any human. So I have found writing with the non-dominant hand to be a very good way to get past all these kind of facades or barriers that we put up, our disbeliefs, etc., about what we can do on the psychic level, and access the communications. How many of you douse? Well, I'm so surprised. So dowsing is a very good way to get your animal communications as well. However, it is limited to primarily the yes-no questions, unless you're very good at it, which I don't tend to be as good at it. Now, I have seen where you have kind of a half moon, and in each of the little pie segments you have a different response, and so you could pendulum the animal's communications in that way. I also saw that one animal communicator actually sold little cards, sort of like the angel cards, that had little responses, and you would pick them out of a basket. So in a way, you were kind of intuiting the animal's responses, kind of similarly to what you would do with tarot or other divination cards. So I find the nonverbal to be the telepathic communication, the one that gives you the greatest depth of communication with the animal. But not everybody, of course, is at that point or ready to do that. But the dowsing is a great way to get the communications from the animal, as well as using like little cards or whatever else. Animals, again, will communicate in words, but they'll also communicate in emotions. So when I recommend learning how to communicate, which I am giving a workshop this evening on doing that, one of the things I teach is making what I call a heart connection. How do you feel when somebody sincerely compliments you? You feel great, right? If they did a really good job, they're your new best friend. You know, your heart's all warm and opened. Well, that's what I call making a heart connection or making a positive energy connection. How many of you have read the Celestine Prophecy? Okay, remember when we talked about the conversation between two people, there was always an energy connection. And of course, in the book, they talked about energy vampires and that sort of thing, where they would be pulling energy inappropriately. But whenever we make a conversation or a connection, there is an exchange of energy. So my recommendation on setting up a climate of receptivity between you and your animal is to think about all the positive attributes that animal has for you, what gifts that animal gives to you, and verbalize them to your animal. And that can begin to create that positive energy connection, and it also allows you to make that link energetically so that the communications have a better chance of flowing. There was a book by J. Allen Boone called Kinship with All Life. He was a pet sitter hired to work with a movie star German Shepherd named Strongheart. And he gives a story in the book about his conversation with Freddie the fly, where he's in the house and this fly keeps showing up in his face, and he begins to realize, this fly wants to talk with me. So he begins to think of all the positive attributes of a fly, how acrobatic they are, how they can fly upside down, how transparent and beautiful their wings are, how iridescent some of them are. And he began to have a very positive energy connection with Freddie. And he then was able to start his communication with Freddie and got the information that Freddie wanted to share that day. So I believe setting that positive heart connection is an important initial step of making communication possible between you and your pet. In the workshop, I talk about that, plus we get a chance to practice sending and receiving telepathic messages, and then I also work with the non-dominant hand. Okay. So does anybody have any questions about what I've covered thus far and what I mean by a heart connection or the communications and methods at which an animal might use? Uh-huh. Okay, we got one on the table here. Okay.
Yeah, my name's Rick and I'm from Fort Collins. When you're talking about a fly, my immediate reaction is, what kind of consciousness might a fly have that could communicate anything in words? Or that's very confusing to me, because the consciousness of a fly in my former cosmology anyway was so limited that it wouldn't make any sense.
Communicating with the insect world is very interesting because there is such a diversity in the insects. There are some that are more group mind, like ants, and that is hard for me to communicate with. I have in vain tried to get fire ants to move out of my yard. No such luck. However, individual insects that do not have that group mind set up can be communicated with. For example, one of the things that I also talk about is the spiritual life of animals, or the spirituality of animals. And so I was trying to understand that hierarchy. There are many people who believe human is top, and I'm not quite so egocentric anymore, because I have met animals much more spiritual and intelligent than me. So I had a bug literally land on my glasses, and when I took it off, it explained to me that a lot of this hierarchy is based on the fact that as we move up, any creationist, please forgive me, I'm into evolution. As we move up this hierarchy of life forms, the difference seems to be is how big the world is that we can interact in. So an amoeba, it's a very small world. But as we move up to life form after life form, the world gets more large and more complex. And so some insects would have a very large world because they fly. Some would be very small because they are limited by their locomotion of their feet. Obviously, human can have a more complex life because we have the opportunity to travel more and interact more. So insects, I know this probably won't sound strange, but we had our speakers orientation meeting, and there was a very large fly in the room, buzzing around, landing on different papers in front of different speakers. And so I just tuned into the fly, and he was fascinated about what was going on in that room and was planning to report on it after he left the room. I had tuned in thinking, oh, you're trapped. Let me help you. Get outside. Oh, I'm very happy. I'm where I want to be. Excuse me. So flies can be quite intelligent, I think. I think you had a question? Oh, okay. So my belief is that we actually have certain levels in this hierarchy, and then we can go in and out of those life forms as we need to on our spiritual path.
It's a statement more than a question.
Okay.
And the story about how this puppy came to me is too long to go into, but he was born April 1st, a real April Fool dog. And we're in the process of pottying outside. And I talk to him a lot, and I'd get up in the morning, I'd take him out, and he does his job, and I treat him and tell him what a great job he did. And I came inside and had him on a leash in the dining room where I would be, because I wanted to see where he was. And as I was telling him what a good job he did, he dumps right on the floor. And I said, no, that's not a good job. And he looked at me like, where's my treat? But what do you do?
In those situations, it is persistence and that positive rewarding. I am not a trainer and I'm not a behavioralist. I am a communicator. But some animals learn housebreaking at different rates. Some of them just don't get the concept until one day it just kind of clicks. Okay. So domestic animals or your pets, I also want to bring out, they also mirror things for us. That's part of what they do. They bring in information for us so that we can see it. And it gives us an opportunity to see what I like to refer to as our growth areas, areas that we can deal with. One of my cats mirrors fear for me. My childhood situation resulted in me having a lot of fears. And the more I have dealt with the fears in my life, the closer that cat has come to me. And actually our relationship has become much more intimate because of that. The one that is very difficult is the animal who mirrors anger, because that is the one that may bite, be aggressive to you. You get rid of the animal, the next animal comes in, has the same job to do because you didn't get it. Also, the animal that has the inappropriate anger mirroring, if you give them to another person who doesn't have that issue, no aggression. So they really do bring us information to help us on our path. That is one of the biggest gifts that our pets give us. I mentioned that the other type of animal is the wild animal that may come in, or another animal that may come in to give us a message to assist us at that time in our life. The effort to communicate with them can be very similar. Often in that situation, I will choose to try to meditate with that animal or on that animal. I've often gotten contacted by people saying, this rattlesnake is sitting on this wall and I need to get rid of it because I don't want to kill it, but I'm afraid it's going to attack one of my goats. And I've said, have you talked to the snake? Have you asked why the snake is here? And the person goes, oh. So sometimes the animal that we might think of as a pest or annoyance may be there to bring a message. Also, whenever I travel, I always look for what animals appear in my environment, and then I look to see what message that animal is bringing. For me, deer has been important. Recently, I saw 2 dead deer in a situation where, in hindsight, I shouldn't have been. But I'm pleased to say yesterday I saw a male deer with antlers who was very much alive, so I feel like I'm in the right place today. The animal that can bring the messages can be a temporary teacher, help us to get a perspective, and again, the communication technique with that animal can be very similar. Trying to think of anything else I wanted to say. Anybody have any questions on that aspect?
Yeah.
Okay.
You talked about mentally picturing a picture.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, I'd like to teach my dog to run and catch a frisbee in the air.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'd never thought about mentally picturing this, but let me ask, is a mental picture better or worse than having a physical picture, say a photograph of a dog catching a frisbee in the air?
The animals, as far as I can tell, do not respond to physical pictures. So the mental picture, especially with the animation, the movement of the whole event, I find to be more effective. I've tried to show them pictures, and I have not gotten any response. However, several animals do watch television.
Yes.
Which is still a flat medium, but there's a lot of movement. And I had cats that would track the wild game off the screen and then be disappointed when they couldn't find them. Mm-hmm. How much time do we have? Say again? 26. Cool. I'm faster than I thought I was. Anybody else have any questions? Oh, I guess we have a line over here.
Well, I was listening to your cat thing, and my cat does watch television. And I really believe and know that all animals see aura, and they are definitely telepathic. Well, what I wanted to share with you was a very different experience I had. My husband and I go to the gym, and it was 109. And outside the gym, walking to the car, was this very, very strange-looking stick bug. And I looked down at it, and I felt that it was sick, it was going to die. And I could see that it was pregnant. And so I picked it up, put it on my shoulder, and we took it home. And I went out to my bushes and my roses, and I put her on there, and I said, please eat up all the aphids. And I would go out every day and think to that little stick bug. And it was like, well, she was big. It was big, almost 5 inches long.
Wow.
And see, I felt that was very special You know, I don't know if a stick bug is telepathic or not, but it was like she ate everything, thanking me for saving her life, and she did have babies. So I
Yeah.
wanted to share that with you.
That brings up the other thing I wanted to talk about. As you realize, our world is out of balance with nature. There are many evidences of that. We have species that are leaving the planet. The lions in a particular park in Africa have FIV, which is the feline form of HIV. There are rhinos in Africa that have immune problems because of a particular infection or virus that they have. I have been approached by a guide, a spirit guide, and I have been invited to join a team which is around the planet. And so I'm also encouraging you, as people who care about this world, to consider doing this as well. And the stick bug story is a very good example of what it is. What I've been asked to do each day is to just connect to another life form, be it a minute, 5 minutes, whatever, and to just be with that life form. And so I have used butterflies, I have used bugs. I'm doing it with a client of mine who is very much on her spiritual path, and she shared that she had worked with flower in the 3 stages, a bud, a bloom, and the fading blossom. And so there is no limit to how you can do this connection. What I have found is that the animals are now starting to present themselves for this being with time. One day when I was coming home from teaching, I very quickly grabbed the mail out of my mail slot and scared this beautiful green gecko. And I go into the house and I go, oh, that was a missed opportunity. So the next day when I came home, he was waiting for me, sitting by my mail in the mailbox again. But this time he was a little bit more visible so I could see him. And so we just had our moment, and I communed with him. And what I have found is that heart connection that I mentioned is expanding. It is very growing. And what Bernard, my spirit guide, said is by people around the planet doing this, we are assisting in returning the balance to the planet. Obviously, we have quite a ways to go, but I prefer to think that every step we take helps on the whole. So I would encourage you, as you go through your life each day, to make a connection with a particular thing that appears into your life. Right now, there hasn't been a lot of word sharing. I did connect with a bumblebee, which is part of still a group mine, and it was going in and out of trumpet vine blossoms on the back fence of my townhouse community. And it was in this wonderful high of just enjoying life and enjoying going in and out of the flowers. It was just a pure joy feeling. So I mostly am getting emotionality at the present time. Then the second stage that Bernard suggested was after you've done just the being with that life form for a time, now asked to connect to whatever nature spirit works with it, be it elf, fairy, deva, whatever. So that's my next step that I'm doing. So I encourage you to join us in helping to restore balance to our planet. Did you have a question over there?
Yes, a few years ago, every time I got in my car and would drive somewhere, either on a trip or, fairly close, I would notice a dead dog. And it got where it was quite evident. And I'm thinking, well, what does that mean to me? That's supposed to be telling me something. Mm-hmm. And I never did really figure out what the dead dogs were about. But they stopped, and I don't see dead dogs anymore. So hopefully, whatever it was. But I'm still kind of curious on that one. And then I have little sugar ants, those teeny tiny ants. And usually there's just one. And there's nothing around for them or anything. And so this friend of mine said, well, it's trying to give you a message. But I don't like it there. And sometimes there's 2 or 3, but most of the time one. So I would love to find out what the sugar little bitty ants is trying to tell me, where they will quit coming in, too.
One of the things that are out there, there's a book called The Medicine Cards, which is a Native American book about the different animal medicines. And there's also a book called Animal Speak. And so both of those can give you guidance into what the message the animal brings. But if you also look at the characteristics of the animal, how they mate, how they hunt or how they live, the foods they eat, that can also be part of the message that they bring. So, and also, it's like dreams. I think each animal has a different meaning for us, and that can be part of the message too. Okay, anybody else have a question? Okay.
Hi, my name is Joanne Massey. I live in Golden, Colorado. And I have a real special story to share about my experience with my Siberian Husky last year. And I did not think that I could communicate with the animals. So what I did, I pretended that I could, and I was right. And Kiska was 14, and he was going downhill, and I knew that he would be making his transition within a few weeks or a few months. And I had to go out to California to visit my daughter, who had been sick for a couple of years, and I wanted to go out there and help her because I do healing work. So I put Kiska's head in my hands. I said, now hang in there. Please hang in here until I get home. Don't do this to my husband. He wouldn't know what to do if you died. He'd probably leave her there for a few days. No, who knows? He wouldn't know what to do. So Kiska said, okay. So I was gone for a week, and when I came home and saw Kiska, he said, I am ready to go. And I could tell by looking at him. And so I called the vet and make the arrangements for the next day. And so what I decided to do, and I just pretended I knew how to do it, and I did. So I guess my message to the audience is sometimes you pretend you really do it. And so what he told me, I pretended I could hear him. So we had a long conversation, and he said, Joanne, he said, I want you to euthanize me, and I want you to be present. Well, I have owned animals ever since I was 10, not the same one, but, like about 10 or 20 dogs or cats, and whenever they were euthanized, I did not want to be there. I didn't think I could handle it. So I thought, you want me to be there? He said, yes, you must be there, and you must bring the other dog. And so my other golden retriever, I said, okay. And he said, I want you to cremate me, and I want you to get the ashes, and I want you and Shanti, my other dog, to go for a walk and spread my ashes where I used to love to walk. I said, that's a deal. And so I work with essential oils. So that night I anointed him with special oils, and I just lay with him for a couple hours, and I went into bed, and then came back out and did the same thing in the morning. And then what I said to him that morning, I said, I'm really into wolf energy, and I said, I would like for you in the spirit world to come and help me in my healing field. He said, okay. And then he changed his mind. He said, no, where I need to go is out to Lori. That's my daughter he said, she needs my help. And he had really helped her when she was at home after her surgery. So anyway, we went to the vet and went through the procedure, and I just held him to see if I could feel when the life energy went to the spirit world. And he died at 10:30 in the morning. And I called my daughter that afternoon. I said, did anything unusual happen to you at 9:30 this morning, which would be California time? She said, oh my gosh, Mom. I was driving along, all of a sudden this energy hit me, and I didn't know which way was right or left, and I really felt this really unusual energy. That was the same moment that Kiska had made his transition. Mm-hmm. So he did go out to her, and we choose to believe that he's helping her get well. Mm-hmm. And this all came about because I pretended I could do it, and I did. And so now I have a new puppy, and it's interesting, our relationship. So thank you for this information. It's really helpful.
I had a friend say, an acquaintance really, and she said when her animal was sick, she decided, okay, what would Griffin Kanter do? So she proceeded to try to figure out what I would do in communicating with the animal, and went through that sequence, even though she'd never worked with me before. So it does work if you just make the decision or the intent. Now, a lot of you will say, well, how do I know what I'm getting is really real? How do I know that I'm not imagining what I'm getting? Because you already know your animal pretty well. And all I can say is in the first communication, maybe not the fifth, whatever, but something is going to come up that is so unique from the perspective of the animal that you'll know that this isn't something from you. An example I like to give is when I worked with a black cat named Raisin about her upcoming move out of Houston to Austin. And so she asked if Austin was green. And Houston is very semi-tropical and Austin is not. So no, Austin was not going to be as green and lush as Houston was. And so then she said, bring me back some dirt so I'll know what Austin is like. Now I show, pictures of places to friends, but I generally don't bring back dirt. But it made perfect sense because of that olfactory preference. So these animals that come into our lives, our pets, are the wild animals. These are not humans in fur or feathers or scales. These are a different life form. They have a different path. They have a different set of priorities. And communicating with them is an opportunity to get an inside look at another species that shares this planet with us. And the only way I think we can save this planet is to really connect with the animal kingdom and regain balance with it. There is the story that in Atlantis we had zoos where the animals chose to be in the zoos, and when they were ready to leave, they could go back to the wild. So I would like to think that we can get to that point with our animal cohabitants of this planet. Any other questions? Okay.
Would you comment on the idea that, in general, kind of as a generalization, that cats have a lot to do with relieving stress from the human physiology, and that dogs have, again, in general, something to do with teaching us about unconditional love, joy, et cetera, et cetera? Validity in those concepts?
In the very, very big picture, yes, you could say. This cat tends to be a very psychic animal, tends to be very much an energy cleaner. Helps to remove negative energy. A lot of them work with massage therapists, other body workers, like to be in the room. Unfortunately, some cats will clean to the extreme to where they have too much toxicity and will overgroom and actually groom down to where they lose their hair, etc.
Or get neurotic?
Yes, yes. The dog, true, is a more bold example of that unconditional love. No other animal quite, like you're gone 5 minutes and, they treat you like you've been gone for 6 years, However, that will vary. Some cats can be quite affectionate and show a lot of unconditional love, but yeah. But I also know some dogs who have been very spiritually involved, and I know dogs who worked with some Indian elders, and they did participate on this Indian ceremonies. So in general, it's even kind of hard to say, to limit by species what they can do. Mm-hmm.
Hi. I have a question about cats. I've noticed with different cats, you'll see like some will have like a tiger energy to them, others like a lion energy, and then the panther energy. And then with dogs, about 7 years ago, I was gifted with a steel blue Great Dane. And I had seen energies off of dogs being kind of wolf and coyote. But this dog carries a dragon energy. And I had never seen another dog until a couple months ago that carried the dragon energy. So I was kind of curious about the dragon choosing to come into the dog, this energy. I mean, have you ever seen this? Or
I hadn't personally, but it's an intriguing thought, and also makes me think this is very old energy being brought forward. Fascinating, but no, I hadn't had that experience. That's neat.
I've been looking for somebody to expand, who could expand on it, because other friends have said, yeah, I do feel the dragon from the animal, and we wind up calling her dragon, so.
Cool.
Yeah.
I'd be interested in talking with her.
Yeah, me too. She's really telepathic.
Okay.
My name is Harry. You mentioned earlier that some animals seem to have more intelligence than you have. I have a little problem with that. Could you explain it a little more so that I can understand it?
Okay. For example, the dog that worked with the Indian elders, to me, was much more spiritually evolved than I was. I have a cat that I talk to periodically that can regularly read ASCII records. Cat who also, that same cat serves as on some sort of communication network For example, what she just shared was that she's working with manatees in Florida. There's a couple of spokespeople for the manatees, and they're very confused about human. Human is getting involved with manatee in an effort to save them. And so they were trying to understand why some humans are nice and some humans are not nice, and some humans are actually mean. And so they were trying to understand the human. And Kit, with her wisdom and her experience with human, is serving on the team to try to help explain the human to other life forms. Intelligence, yeah, there have been dogs who literally, I think, actually smarter, more with it up there. They seem to be faster. It's interesting, though, working with a reptile because they are cold-blooded. I'm a Gemini, so I think really fast. The reptile being cold-blooded, I had to slow down. I had to get into his rhythm to communicate with him. I think it's time to do our demo.
Can I just ask one question?
Okay.
Have you had any of your cats talk to you about lion beings?
I'm not sure what your question is.
Do you know about the lion beings?
Well, I know lions exist on the planet, but
Yeah. No, this is a soul
no,
that used to incarnate in the big cats.
no,
and-
mine haven't talked to me
And now
about it.
they're incarnating in domestic cats and
Oh.
also in horses.
Cool, no.
And I was just wondering if you had any, well, ask them about them.
I
I'm sure they
will.
know.
Okay. I think so. Oops. Okay, first of all, I need to know the baby's name.
Crystal.
Crystal. And how old is Crystal?
Crystal will be 4 years old this month.
Hi, baby. We're a little nervous. Little nervous. That's okay. There's a lot of people looking at you weren't there, yes. We didn't know there was quite so many people in here. Being up on the front row, she didn't know that. Okay, what did you want to ask her, Dean?
Crystal, she answers to Christy most of the time. We got her when she was 2 years old. She had already raised 2 litters, but she seems to have something about men. She will not cozy up to me. She will jump up on the Davenport with Phyllis. She never will with me. She does, however, when I walk away from her, she comes right behind me and she touches me with her front feet, just kind of like she wanted to play tag. But the moment I turn around, she scoots. And whenever I say, come here, she just goes the other way as fast as she can. Except one time during the day, when I get up and sit on the stool, she comes in to have her ears scratched. But why does she run from me is what we would like to know, when I have never done anything to her except love her and take her with me in the car and so forth. But somehow she's got something against men, we feel.
Well, the bathroom thing, it's sort of like you're a captive audience at that point and you have nothing else to do, so that's a good time. Mine comes and presents her rump because that's her favorite part to get petted. Do you know anything about her history before?
All we know is that she was more or less kept as a breeder, and we suspect, but we do not know this, that the man was not kind to her.
And how else does she demonstrate this thing about men, a thing about men?
How else does she demonstrate about this? Well, she just
like another man coming into your home, a strange man, what would she do?
When a strange man comes in, she runs right up to him. 5 minutes. Well, anybody that comes in the door, she meets them right away, and she wants to get acquainted and sniff and smell and that sort of thing, man or woman. That's another thing that puzzles us.
Okay. Mostly, I feel that you have a lot of personal energy, a pretty strong personal energy, and that kind of is hard for her to approach. So, I don't know if you can kind of soften your being when you're with her. She's intrigued by you, but she's also a little intimidated by you. Your voice is also strong, and you kind of have a good voice. It's a strong voice, and she's more on a little bit on the timid side, a little bit more on the little anxious. So she is kind of trying to reach out, but yet is a little timid.
Oh, she seems to be quite timid. But I just wondered if she would tell you anything or indicate anything to you about what happened to her in her first 2 years.
Basically, I get that she was pretty much livestock. I got a minimal handling, the handling that was necessary for grooming and stuff. I don't get any sweet talk. I don't get any, I don't get a bond. I don't get a connection.
Well, I've tried to approach her as gently as possible. We had another dog exactly like her before that. She was with me or jumped on my Davenport with me or whatever all the time.
Well, you're winning her over. It's just going to be a slow thing. But there are some Bach flower remedies that might help. Bach flower remedies work on the central nervous system.
I'm familiar with what they are, but which ones would you...
Aspen, mimulus, and water violet.
Write that down.
Aspen for general anxiousness and anxiety. Mimulus for fear, because I get a little bit of fear of your energy. You're a very expanded person. The person that she worked with before was very shut down, very kind of constricted. So this, if you're not used to an expanded being, it can be a little offsetting. Mimulus is for the known fear, which I think is that she's afraid of that kind of energy. But water violet is for bonding.
Water violet.
Mm-hmm. And the Bach people, for like animals, like humans, it's 4 drops per day in their food or their water or directly in their mouths. For a short-term situation, it's 3 to 10-day treatment. But in a chronic situation, it can be as long as 1 month per year of age. So conceivably, you might need to do 4 months.
Yeah, she just seems to have been mama's girl from the word go.
She needed that gentle energy because she was like emotionally deprived, emotionally starved.
Well, that's what we suspected. She does seem to be warming up a bit.
Mm-hmm.
While we're in the car now, alone, she will crawl over onto my lap while I'm driving.
Mm-hmm. So you might work on doing that heart connection, complimenting her, telling her what a beautiful girl she is, because there's always something about the animal that you can link to, connect to. And she is a beautiful girl.
Oh, yeah. Right. Oh. You got any other questions, Mother?
Aspen for general anxiousness and anxiety. Mimulus for fear of known things. Mimulus is M-I-M-U-L-U-S. And then for bonding is water violet. But if, there's some remedies that are just very good for certain situations. If you're going to blend animals together, like 2 roommates or husband and wife blending, then vine is for aggression, holly for jealousy, water violet for sharing and bonding.
Mother, did you have another, was you going to ask one more thing? Oh, I call her by the word doggy something. She thinks that I insult her by calling her doggy. Why is everybody agreeing with her?
It's, you're not getting the energy of the name. It's like she is more than dog.
Okay, now I've had the fingers shaken to me. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Griffin. Okay, folks, now if you want to hear about some more animal stuff, be back here in 9 minutes. Thank you very much, folks.